excellence in grades becomes almost an automatic byproduct.
It's not the center, it's not the core.
Content will never be king in today's world, never. What dispositions are you going to be leaving the school with? All I want is my child to be happy.
Which wasn't the case 20 years
Which wasn't the case 20, 30 years ago. We mistake a busy child to be a happy child. My child is swimming, doing taekwondo, learning piano, learning sitar.
You're an event planner.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
One failure and they just want to...
They just can't cope because they've never dealt with it. There is no safety net. Unconditional love. That's the only place your child will get it, is from you. So children who have loving, secure parents, sky's the limit for them.
Absolutely.
I went apprehensively, dismissively, and Aakash, I think 3 months became 40 years.
Really?
Yep, I never sat the civil service exam.
You didn't? Hi everyone, this is Aakash Chaudhry. As part of our Learning Leaders Podcast, today we have Ms. Vanita Uppal, Director, British School, New Delhi. Let's get into the conversation and learn from her and from her journey what it takes to build one of the most prominent international schools in India. So thank you, Mr. Uppal, for taking our time today for this conversation. This is a conversation, we've been really looking forward to have.
Thank you.
Especially because, in India, we see a very interesting rise in terms of international schooling, international education. But if you compare it with, what it used to be,
Correct.
few expats and some ecosystem to support them to where we are now.
Right.
With over 400 IB schools in India alone. So how has this whole international education scene changed in India?
I think it's been transformative, the change, the shift in landscape. So when I joined the British school 35 years ago,
wow.
There were only 2 international schools in the city. The one was the American school, the other one was us.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think maybe some other embassy ran a school, the German embassy. But there was nothing else in the name of international education.
Mm-hmm.
And today, I think there are about 30 schools in the NCR which offer an international curriculum. But I think there is a distinction between offering an international curriculum and being an international school.
What is that distinction?
The distinction is that when I look at the example I know best, which is the British school, it is an approach to education. It is an educational philosophy that from the get-go has been steeped in being student and child-centric, where the pedagogical approaches have been inquiry-based, concept-based, doing much more beyond the taught curriculum, right? And of course, the demographic helps in the sense that we have a transient population. So it's really, as Gandhi would say, it's a place where cultures of all countries, flow in and flow out very easily.
Right.
And that is the nub of an international education. Multilingualism is a core of internationalism. So though there is a growth, like you pointed out, huge exponential growth. Cambridge is offering about more than 1,000 schools offer the Cambridge curriculum. We've got Study Australia coming in. And that's a great move because they are offering something that is beyond the taught curriculum. You're talking about the unwritten curriculum, developing the whole child like we believe at the British school. So growth is phenomenal. It has also enabled a lot of professional dialogue between colleagues across the country. Because when we were there, we were almost isolated.
Yeah.
So we continued to look outward, largely towards Britain, to import the best practices and contextualize them for ourselves. So the growth is phenomenal. It's great for parents and children because they have a choice.
At least they're getting that choice.
They're getting that choice. And you also have the Indian parent typically has always been very aspirational for their children. Education is high on the agenda of every Indian family. That hasn't changed. That's also grown because people are beginning to see that a sound, well-rounded education is really the ladder to success, however you want to define success.
Correct.
And so I think that change has been phenomenal. I think the one word that describes it's growth in every sense. We've even got foreign universities now coming into India, partnering with Indian universities, setting up their own campuses. So it's a question of access. It's a question of choice, which I think is a very positive move.
Right. You mentioned about, education still is the most important element for,
Right.
Parents. But has the, the flavor and the quality of education focus changed for parents, or are they still, gunning for grades? Are they still gunning for, marks and colleges and degree, or this is like they want to develop their children?
I think you're getting both.
Okay.
You're getting both. I would not say that the parent in the subcontinent, and not just India, Southeast Asia is the same, right? It's not that they've suddenly said, okay, grades are not important. No, that will never happen.
That never happen.
That I don't see happening.
And should it not happen?
I think if you're going to measure achievement by grade, my contention is that is one indicator. It's a kind of success.
Yeah.
It's a kind of achievement, but it's not the be all and the end all.
It is not.
It is not, because today the grade, you got good grades in the IB, brilliant. You get into a great university, even better, fantastic. But if you haven't left with the skills that you need to navigate an ambiguous and uncertain world, then those grades are going to look good on your shelf and on the mantle, but they won't do anything for you.
You won't be able to use them.
So unless there is stickability in that learning, unless there is applicability of what you've learned, then it's going to be a very good degree from a very good college. And that does carry currency.
Yes.
I'm not saying it doesn't carry currency. My contention is that if you have an ecosystem in which a child is learning, which is enabling and empowering that child to explore, to become vested in something that he didn't even know, that they had that potential in them, recognizing that potential, guiding them in that journey, I think should be the role that educators play. Right? And when that happens, excellence in grades becomes almost an automatic byproduct.
Yeah. It's not the center, it's not the core, but it's a byproduct of a great system.
Yes, because it would be a lie to say that people have stopped measuring schools by their university placements.
Yeah, they do.
But they do. Unfortunately, that is the reality. Yeah. They will. But is that all that you want from a school? No. Is that all that you want from sending your child into an educational institution? If that's what you want, then that's the kind of school you choose. Then you don't come to the British school, for example. Right. Because here the whole child is the whole point.
So what kind of aspirations do people come to you with when they talk about coming to the British school, New Delhi? Both.
They really want, and it is getting better by the year. I now hear parents in forums when we do these coffee mornings and these interactions with parents, and many of them will say something that just is music to my ears, that all I want is my child to be happy.
Wow. Which wasn't the case 20 years
ago. Which wasn't the case 20, 30 years ago. Now it is, I want my child to be happy. I don't want my child anxious. I don't want my child stressed. And which is brilliant. And when we have evaluators and accreditation teams, and at least I think the last 4 on the trot have said to me in their debrief meetings, this is a happy school. And I think we won half the battle there.
Yes.
That if a child feels safe, valued and happy, it's the same for adults.
Yeah.
It's the same for adults. You cannot hope that human flourishing will be at the center of your provision if the landscape around it doesn't nurture that. So you have to enable that. Yes. And I think that's what good educational institutions should be doing.
And, one is that you've been an educator for international curriculum for a very long time, almost, more than 30 years now.
Yeah.
And there is another thing to lead a prominent international school in the country. Where is this difference? How does it feel? Is it too much of a responsibility to shoulder? Because people look up.
Yeah, it is a huge responsibility, and one that the responsibility I take very seriously. The quote unquote power that comes with it, I take very lightly. Because I think whether I was a teacher or as a leader, I think I have taught intuitively and I have led intuitively. I have taught with compassion and love. I've led with my heart and love and my head. And for me, that wasn't a a Rubicon that was too difficult to cross. That wasn't. And I think, and I say this, I do a lot of training for leaders in schools. And I believe that when your leadership style is value driven, then you can really deal with almost anything. Because when does
a strong principle there.
Yeah, when does it get tested?
Yes.
People think it only gets tested in a crisis. I think your leadership is tested every day. Because you're making decisions every day, especially as a school leader, that are going to impact children for years, that are going to impact parents, staff for years to come.
Yes.
So it is not that great leadership is born in a dramatic moment. To me, it is usually grown out of your day-to-day interactions.
Daily, collective, cumulative.
That because if you're not authentic and sincere, and you're saying one thing and doing another, you're going to be called out very soon. And that kind of leadership is the kind I've learned. You also learn from bad leaders.
That's true.
And that's the kind of leadership I knew would never resonate with me. One of my predecessors once told me that, you should learn to camouflage what you feel because you carry your heart on your sleeve.
Yeah.
And I said, that's the only way to be. Because I firmly believe that you have to lead with heart and love. Because kindness is core, which is getting increasingly eroded.
Especially when you're around students and educators.
Because everybody who's coming into your workplace, into your classroom, is coming from a context that you might not be fully aware of.
Yes.
Right? And and we have the privilege that we have an ecosystem where the individual is honored, be it a child or a teacher. And I think that is something that just sits with me so well. Yes, leading an international school, like school that's been rated best in the world, top of the line in India, it is a responsibility. The pressure does get high.
Yeah.
And it is real pressure. Okay. It's not just about moving sales figures. It's a real pressure because you're dealing with people, you're dealing with human beings, you're dealing with children, and you can't afford to make mistakes. As an educator, there is very little tolerance for making an error and making a mistake because your wrong decision can negatively impact the life of a child.
Absolutely.
And even if you make one, that's one too many.
Yes. And how does the whole environment, where you've got on one side expats, on the other side there are Indian families at the British School, and then there are got global faculties which are coming from all over the world.
Right.
So how do you ensure that, each of these elements were very different,
right,
but they all come together to create the magic that, the school delivers?
I think that's a very good question, Aakash. That is something that I think is part of the DNA of the school. And it is not something that I've created. It's something I walked into 35 years ago.
Yeah. And
that time we were less than 300 students in a small Care 1 campus, right? And we are now at about 1,300. And if there's one thing I've done, I've been deliberate and intentional in ensuring that sense of belonging that so defines us is something that stays. It stays as the core. So in our school, there is no such thing as these are expats, these are Indians, these are third culture kids, I think we are and I touch wood, we are very blessed that we have a shared vision, a shared humanity. We are all singing from the same hymn page.
And I can vouch for it as a parent.
We're all singing from the same hymn page. And I think when we get people from different cultures and languages, the richness that adds to our ecosystem is to be, I'm sure, envied by many. I mean, right now we have students from about 56 nationalities. The number of languages that are spoken and that cultural context that comes in with it. And you learn to pivot. As a leader, you have to be respectful and appreciative of a cultural context from which a family is coming, which you're addressing. Right? And absolutely, you have to, because there is no one size fits all. Right? You might have to give the same message, but in a very different way to people who are coming from different cultural contexts. And I think therein lies the success of TBS, that we are able to do that without making anybody feel that you don't belong. I mean, how many students and teachers will say, this is their second home, right? This is their second home. The other day I had a student who was our alumni about, I think, early 2000s. He graduated from Illinois, then went to Georgia Tech, is now working with Boeing and doing a spectacular job. And what do they do when they come to Delhi? They'll definitely come to the school. And for a school that has a transient alumni as well, some of them will come just to come to Delhi, to come to the school to meet their teachers and the support staff. Which is, fantastic. Absolutely. The first hugs are for the support staff. Which is, I think that really talks a lot about the culture of the school.
It says a lot.
Yeah.
And do you see this DNA that has been built over the years at the British School in the Indian community? Are other international educations offering schools are able to do, are able to build this kind of
I don't think it's for me to comment. There are some I don't think I can comment on what those schools are doing to build. See,
but my question is more on, when I talk to parents, everybody wants to send their kids to the British school, but because of location and their situation, they're not. And then the question comes, where should we send, and how do we assess? Is this school really offering the core international education?
And I think that boils down, Aakash, to the aspiration that a parent has. See, there is every school here, there's so many successful, good schools. The context is different, right? You as a parent need to be very clear about what you want. What are your 3 non-negotiables for a school education for your child? And then there are so many measurements and evaluations which are now available that weren't available when I was a student.
True.
They weren't there. Nobody did that.
Yeah, the secret sauce stayed with the school.
The secret sauce stayed with the school, and it was largely the name of the school.
Yeah.
Right? And that brand was obviously built.
Yes.
Now that I'm on the inside, I know how much time it must have taken to build those brands. But at that time, it was just XYZ. There were 5 or 6 schools. Everybody went to one of those. Right? So what you do, I think the question to me is, what is the culture of the organization that you want to embed, that you want to be known by? And therefore, you as a parent, now, there are schools, for example, which are brilliant in sports in the UK. So you know that if you want to specialize in sports, that's a school you want to go to.
Correct.
Right? So it depends on what is your aspiration for your child. And every school doesn't want the DNA that we have, because the demographic is different.
Very different.
So they might want something entirely different for their cohort of students. So I don't think we can compare apples and oranges because the context is different.
True. And what would you want to say for people, for parents outside? How should they look at British school now under your leadership? That this is the DNA, or you mentioned that there are a lot of schools outside the UK who are known for sports, some are known for, their pastoral care. So what is the message TBS is sending out today?
I think a few. And I think it's a school where no matter what your learning style is, no matter what language you speak when you come, no matter what your interest is, we will add value. We will add value. We will give your child a place where that child will feel that he or she belongs, that there are opportunities to explore and grow, and that we will return to you a happy, fulfilled child who is flourishing. Now, if it depends, like, you know what our vision statement is: thrive, believe, succeed. And we don't define it. We don't define it. Because what thriving means to you, what success means to person X could be different. But our should I say, priority is that no matter what that is, there is a shared vision, of course. There is. It's not that everyone is singing to their own tune. No. Yes, we want you to succeed academically. Yes, we want you to grow as confident, principled young people. So I would say it's the IB learner profile is what the school offers and delivers. Those 10 attributes, because the grades will come, content will never be king in today's world. Never. Never. Content will never be. What dispositions are you going to be leaving the school with? So about 10, 11 years ago, when I took over as head, That's the first exercise I did, a cross-phase exercise with primary and secondary.
Okay.
And we said, you might be leaving school in year 3. If you're a diplomat, you might be leaving after 2 years. You might be spending 10 years. You might be here from nursery to year 13. What is it collectively that we want students who leave from our school to leave with? How do we want them to, we can't determine how they enter because they enter from so many, how do we want them to leave?
So we can actually play a role in how they leave.
And what are we going to do to make that happen?
Yeah.
And we deliberated on this for a few months, right? We looked at all our skills, objectives, national curriculum, Cambridge, IB, we did all that. And we all collectively agreed that whether you are an EYFS child or a year 13 child, we want the IB learner profile to be our anchor. And we said the only 2 words we added to that to make it ours was, because in the IB learner profile, there is no mention of enjoyment, which is key to us. Children should have fun while they are learning. So we say, we want you to enjoy and achieve as you adapt these attributes. And what are these? That you're balanced, you're principled, you're a critical thinker, you are caring, and etc., etc. All fantastic human values and attributes. So that's what we stand for. Academic success, as you know, comes. Brilliant university placements come. But we are not a school. You will never see British school publishing its results or saying we've got into IB. We never do it.
Yeah.
Because to me, an equally strong headline is that I had these 6 students or 8 students who were struggling. We did not think they'd cross the threshold and get the diploma, but they've got it.
Yeah.
To me, that's a stronger success story.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you give me a child who's brilliant, committed, motivated, brilliant at conceptual understanding, hardworking. Well. It's not that they don't need support. Of course they do. But it's easier to work with. But getting those who are often neglected and are not the bright spots in anybody's lives, to get them over the threshold, I think this is something we excel at.
Absolutely. And, as you just said, I mean, the brighter ones needs the nudge. But these are the ones who really need a transformative effort.
Yeah, I think the brighter ones, what they need are lessons in resilience. I've seen that, 40 years now in education. And one of the things I think young people struggle with is their ability to deal with failure. The percentage is very low.
That's a trait that must be taught.
And that is not something you can hope that they'll catch it from somewhere. It has to be ingrained. And I know it's a cliche to say celebrate failure. I'm not saying celebrate failure. What I'm saying is accept. Have the capacity to reflect. I goofed up. I did this wrong. But I can still pick myself up. You will fall. You will fall. Life is not linear. There will be ups and downs. But I've seen what happens is when very bright students, got in everywhere, got the grades, got into the best universities. You look at the attrition rate in US universities. It's very high.
One failure and they just want to...
Because they just can't cope, because they've never dealt with it. And by the time you get to university, there is no safety net. So I think what we do at school really well is enable children to openly discuss areas of growth. And that can only happen when your ecosystem is non-judgmental. For staff and for students.
That is so important.
It works both ways.
Yes.
It works both ways.
So, on that note, I want to, change a gear a bit to, go down to your journey. What got you into education?
Okay.
And it's been a long time.
Yes.
And, and I know a lot of people say that education is something that should be more by choice. Unfortunately, it is not.
It is not.
But you picked it up by choice. And
not really.
Oh, no, you did. No. Let's hear that story then.
So it was...
Not many people know about it.
Yes. It was initially by accident.
Okay.
Because I went to St. Stephen's College, and every Stephanian by and large does sit the civil service exams, right?
Yes.
It's a done thing. So I told my dad, because traditionally I was meant to be a doctor. I was the nerd, so I was obviously going to be a doctor or an engineer. So I said, no, I was hooked on to history. I really enjoyed that. So my father was an engineer. He was with the UN and he couldn't understand the joy of studying history. And I said, no, I'll get to Stephens and I promise I'll sit for the IFS. Done. Okay, sorted, did my undergrad, did my master's, stopped my master's. And then, of course, joined up for study classes to sit for the civil service exam. And my friend's mother owned a school, a CBSE school. And she said, when do your classes begin? I said, another 3 months, I'm just going to chill. I mean, we didn't use that language then, but I said, I just want to relax, want to read, want to travel. So she looked at me with contempt. And she said, why would a young 22-year-old not want to work? You come to school and you teach. And I said, me and teach? No, not happening. It's not something I can do. And she says, no, I don't have a teacher of English. So I said, brilliant, I'm a teacher of history. So in any case, I don't fit the role. So she said, no, you speak such good English, you come. And I was literally, because I could never say no to her, I used to look up to her and I was a bit scared of this. She was my best friend's mother. And a little intimidated. And she said, well, I'll pick you up and take you to school in my own car.
Wow.
So I said, okay. So I went apprehensively, dismissively. I'm doing this for just kind of keeping her quiet. And Aakash, I think 3 months became 40 years.
Really?
Yeah. I never sat the civil service exam.
You didn't?
I did. It became, I know it's a wrong word to use in education, but it became an addiction. I just loved being in the classroom. I didn't know. I never thought in my wildest dreams, I would have never thought I'd be a teacher. Then I taught for 3 years. And of course, then I started
in that
teaching.
School?
Then I started teaching my subject, history and whatever. And then I said, no, this is what I want to do. And so therefore I need to get trained.
Wow.
So then I left my job. I went back to Delhi University. I did my B.Ed. I topped there as well. And then I came back to the same school and taught for a while. And then since then I've been at the British School. So I think it came by accident, but thank God for that accident.
But you made that choice.
Oh, then it was, there really was no choice. Because
it was the calling.
It was a calling. And I could be sleeping at 2 a.m, but I'd be up at 6 to go and rush in. Till today, I still come into school with a spring in my step. So I think I made the right choice.
Amazing. And given this kind of background, the Order of British Empire, one of the very few people in India, and in education, you're the one.
In India at that time. I don't know whether anybody's got it after me, but at that time I was the only one.
Tell us the story and what significance that brings in your life.
I think the story, of course, it came as a shock because you get a form to fill in, right? That you're going to accept it if it's given, and a detailed history they want. And I was in Canada with my children and I saw it. I thought somebody was playing a prank.
Really?
Because it came in my junk mail and I said, somebody's playing a prank. Why would I be nominated for this? And I showed it to my son. You know how these kids are, they go on the IP address. They know, Mom, it's an authentic email. So I said, okay, then I'll accept it. But never in my, OB, me, I couldn't find the connect. So I filled up that form and sent it off. Didn't hear anything for 4 months, 5 months. So forgot about it.
Okay.
Forgot about it.
Which year was it?
This was 20, what year are we in now?
26.
I reckon it was 2014.
Okay.
And I wasn't the director, I was the principal at that time. And I was sitting with my friend at Hyatt, I was having coffee. And as I often do, rudely, I keep checking my emails because I'm addicted to my work. And I just went, like that. So my friend said, what happened? So I was speechless. I just gave her the phone. And it was a mail from the High Commissioner that I'm delighted to congratulate you that you're going to be a recipient of the Order of the British Empire. So, I couldn't kind of process it at that time. And then I informed the director and he announced it. And I think then when I started mulling over it and I spoke to my director at that time, I said, on what basis have I earned this? So then he listed it out. And I said, okay. But I think, and I still, till today, Aakash, I think, and I said that in my acceptance speech, that the OBE to me was a recognition of TBS. Because everything I did, everything I learned, the way I grew as a leader was at the British School. And I think for me, it signified a watershed moment for the school because London knew there was a British school in Delhi.
Yes.
And that I think was, that was a huge highlight for me in my career.
That's amazing. And how did your friends and your family react to it?
Oh, they all went a bit mental, I think. So, and the High Commissioner was very kind. He hosted a reception for me at the High Commission, and he said,
"Oh, wonderful!
100 guests of your choice." So at that reception, I had some of my alumni. I had colleagues who'd worked with me, my school friends. My aunt flew in from Scotland, and yeah, it was a very, very special occasion. Mm-hmm. The board was there, colleagues were there. It was quite a moment.
And did you see any change in yourself after that in terms of looking at the responsibility as an educator, as a principal?
No, I think that's a very, very good question. I think what it definitely did strengthen for us was our attempt to further strengthen our connections with British education.
Right.
And because we've always been the advocates of that educational system, which was encouraging thinking, was encouraging experiential learning, etc.
Right.
And I think from then till now, I don't think there's any looking back because our connections with the British and international associations has grown much stronger post 2014. Mm-hmm. And as you know, we were recognized as the best British school in the world. Today, we are members of HMC, COBIS, FUBISIA. I chair the FUBISIA board.
Yes.
And so I think it's been a transformative journey. And what it has meant is that it has opened up opportunities for students and teachers.
Absolutely.
So our students participate in FUBISIA events and COBIS events. Our teachers are presenting, are training and leading training sessions in these organizations. So I think it's a huge testament to the school's global recognition and its place and its place in the world. Yeah,
absolutely. And moving to the most important question now, as far as education as sector is concerned, where technology has done a certain number of transformation in the last 10 to 15 years. But now comes the biggest one, which is AI. So
for now, that's the biggest one. Yeah.
AGI,
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
So how has first of all, the education body has responded to it, and what are they expecting from the school?
I think every conference, as a testament to what you're saying, there is no educational conference that doesn't have a strand on AI and EdTech and etc. That's happening. I think at the British school, and we've taken an approach, I think, that's really future-proofed. Our approach to EdTech and emerging technology, not just AI.
Future-proof, okay.
Yeah, in the sense that we've kept it organic. We've kept it dynamic. We've gone away from creating 5-year tech plans.
Okay.
We now have a working document where we've laid out our approach. And our approach is an approach of balance.
Okay.
Our approach is an approach of balance, and for those who are in the educational field, Michael Fullan is a guru that everybody reads. And I remember a quote from Michael Fullan where he said that it is that technology should be driven by the pedagogical horse. That you use technology, whatever technology. That it should be driven by the pedagogical horse and not the other way around. Now, at the British school, we've had that for the last more than the decade when we introduced bring your own devices, when we introduced one-on-one iPads for primary, we set up, interactive smart screens. We didn't do it now, we did it 15 years back. Right? And when COVID happened, we were, I think I can say with pride, one of the first schools that had already done 200 dry runs on Microsoft before the lockdown happened. Right? So technology is not new to us. We've embraced it, and we see that it occupies a center space in the way we have to raise our children and get them ready for the world. So with AI, yes, we are using tools, we're using Copilot, we're using Magic School. We are doing that. Our teachers are being told to have fun, explore, because we are not debunking it. We're not saying, don't fear it. You embrace it ethically. And that is what we have to train our children to do.
Right.
You can't expect them to be digital dinosaurs when they enter the world of work. That can't happen. IB, for example, is going to go into digital assessments.
Yes.
Right? So you have to train them for that. But at the same time, we cannot lose the value of human connection. We can't do that.
So when you say can't lose the value of human connection,
Right.
do you still see the role of content by human as important, or you feel that, human needs to double up on certain other things in the ecosystem?
See, content was never king.
No.
For a sound educator, content was never king. From the time we entered the workforce, 1995 is when computers came to the British school, right? When we entered, the content was always the click of a button, right? It's always the click of a button. It's how you process that. It's how you, through that content, you develop conceptual understanding as your approach. How do you train students to solve problems? How do you get them to be adaptive? How do you get them to be agile? Right now, I know AI is becoming more human, if there is such a word. AI and emerging tech yet cannot do that to the fullest.
Right.
Right? But to not use AI where it is saving time is also foolish.
Right.
So we were just...
Again comes to the balance part.
Again comes to the balance part so that's what we are doing at work. That, okay, if I can feed this, it would take me 2 days to make this dashboard. Okay? I can now feed it there and I can get this data analysis of the results of this class in less than 3 minutes. I then have 27 minutes, not as free, but to develop things that actually will help children go out into the world and succeed.
Right.
I don't know whether you've read this MIT study which proves that point. That yes, to say, okay, give me a summary of this chapter. AI will do it for you in 10. But then you haven't learned the concept.
Yeah.
And that is where the damage can come. Remember, this is also a generation that likes quick fixes, shortcuts. So one of the things we've started doing in school, we've just done one, but we're going to replicate that, are screen-free days.
Screen-free days.
Screen-free days. Once a month.
Okay.
There'll be a screen-free day.
Nothing on the digital screen board.
Nothing on the digital
no
screen.
Laptops.
No laptops, nothing. We did that last month. And I've done some feedback with students, and the little ones loved it. Because what is getting lost is the art of storytelling, is the art of reading the room, changing your expression, modulating your voice, improvising on your strategy, because everybody's looking at one screen, right? Where is that dialogue? Where is that conversation? Some of my best lessons were taught under the big tree that used to be in our front lawn, right? That is being lost. So we want to recapture that.
Right.
So the feedback from parents has been phenomenal, especially from primary school parents. They love it. That there is a screen-free day. One of the students made a very telling comment. They said, we kind of got used to it and liked it. I don't think our teachers enjoyed it that much. So which tells you that is a skill that is going to get eroded.
Yeah.
So we are so chuffed with the success of day one. We're going to do one every month.
Oh, that's good.
Your screen-free day. Yep.
I mean, you mentioned about this generation. So what do you see has changed over generations? You've been an educator for so long.
I'm the dinosaur, So I've seen a lot. What I'm seeing is that, I have to say I'm very optimistic about young people. Otherwise, I shouldn't be in education if I'm not. They are focused. Today's 18, 19, 20-year-old is pretty clear about what they want and they're very clear about what they don't want.
At least that's a good starting point.
Which is a good start, that I don't want this. They have more agency. They have more agency. They feel more confident. I'm making a generalization here, right? I think it's a more confident, a more focused generation. Maybe at times lacking a bit in emotional resilience. Maybe they do tend to get, I think they compartmentalize their lives, but not very successfully at times. There is a blurring. And so it's a bit contrarian. They know what they want, but they find the path to get to that a little more difficult. If you know what I mean. I don't know whether I was clear. I think if I look at my graduates from 2000, that I think they were emotionally more mature.
Emotionally more mature.
They were definitely more mature.
And why was that?
I think it was also a different... See, schools are not isolated institutions. You're part of the societal makeup, isn't it?
Yes.
You're not sitting in isolation. What's happening in school is filtering out. What's happening outside is filtering in. Right? I think the family structures have changed. You have a lot more working parents. You have a lot more access to a lot of things. I call it a crisis of plenty. I think there is so much choice. There is an age of too many gurus. So it's slightly messy. The world, our
It's
children,
too crowded.
there's so much noise. You don't know what is.
How to find your signal?
There's so much clutter, so much noise, because there is so much of everything around. I think there was a greater, maybe want of a better word, fewer choices, more simplicity. Then definitely 30 years ago, your options weren't there.
Yeah.
I mean, now when you want to go out for an evening with your family, your young children will be opening their phones and saying, this has a 4.4 rating, this does sushi, this does... It'll take you 45 minutes as a family to decide, and then you'll end up going to a place to say, okay, we'll go to a place where everybody can eat what they want because nobody wants one thing. Right? Compare it to 30 years ago, when a family dinner was, okay, this is where we go for birthdays. End of story. I'm not saying that is good or this is bad. That's the difference. So when you translate that into every walk of life, subject choices, career choices, university choices, choices in friendships, choices in relationships, on how I want to lead my life, a more evolved parent community.
But doesn't better evolution comes through throwing multiple variable stimuli and let the mind get sharper?
You know, when overstimulation also is a risk.
Yeah, true.
It is a risk. And at
And
times,
you feel that we are in the overstimulation era?
I think we are in, it's overstimulated. Even when I walk into a classroom and you see, especially with the younger children, there is so much material around them. The stimuli that like you said, it sharpens your mind, great. But I think, ask the brain also, na?
Yeah.
Ask the brain also, how much is it processing?
And every brain is different.
Every brain is different. And if you've done brain research, till age 16, it's only the amygdala that's developed. It's only your pleasure hormones that are kicking in. When you'd say to a 16-year-old, what were you thinking when you did that? Wasn't actually thinking, because the rational part of the brain hasn't been developed yet. So in that, you bombard this with so many choices, it becomes difficult to navigate. And I think that's where young people need help. They need guidance, they need connection with parents. And I find that is something that we need to work more on.
I think you've spoken about what school has been doing and what role you've been playing. But how important is the parental role, which more often than not, what I've seen parents talk about, here's my kid, I'm
Over to you.
handing it over to you.
Yep.
Just develop this kid and give it back to me. And they forget that majority of the time the child is spending at home.
Yeah.
And what would you want to tell to those parents that what is your role?
I think few basic things. See, the parenting is probably the most rewarding and the most challenging job that you'll ever do, because there's no training manual for it. Right? It's trial and error. What you did with your first child, you'll hopefully learn from those mistakes and not repeat it with your second child. Right? Hopefully. But I think there are a few universal truths that still exist in parenting. I feel that today's parent is an anxious parent, because they feel that they also have to, the bar has been raised for them. Right? You have to be the cool friend. You have to be with it. Your child's friends should see you as the cool one. You should be able to rationalize every decision that you make for your children. All that's fantastic.
Is there a real pressure?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is. Because I have parents who will come and say, I don't want my child to do this. But my child says, you're the only one who's saying no. Everybody else is saying yes. So I said to that mom, I said, this is an age-old tactic. I've used it. So I said, the thing to do is pick up the phone and speak to the other parents. But anyway, having said that, I think today's parent is also very aspirational. Every parent wants the best for their child. That hasn't changed. That hasn't changed. How to get to that best has changed, right? Very often we mistake a busy child to be a happy child.
Oh, that's...
Yeah, and my child is swimming, doing taekwondo, learning piano, learning sitar, busy child. I'm a good parent. No, it doesn't work like that.
No, you're an event planner.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. So I think to parents, what I would say is that open, honest, and respectful communication is the key, especially as your children are growing older. Be a person they can come to, but you are not their friend. You are the parent.
You strongly believe that
Absolutely no
distinction should be made clear.
You are friendly. You love your child. You want to be there. You want, like, I'm very blessed. Both my children will share everything. At times I don't want them to share it, but they share it with me, right? Because they know there is going to be no judgment. There is going to be no judgment. Yes, there will be, this was wrong or this was right, but I'm not going to castigate them for it, right? If I don't have a relationship where I can trust my parent to have my back, I'm not going to be open. Have the back, but remember, you are the parent. You have to draw the boundaries.
Yes.
You have to enable your child to be able to discern between right and wrong. Where is that going to come from? It's going to come from the values you are giving. By the time a child comes to school at age 3 or 4, a lot of it has already been embedded.
Yes.
It's already been embedded. How you treat your domestic staff at home will be an indicator to your child as to how they're observing. You have to read this one poem which I used when you thought I wasn't looking. And I tell it brings tears to my eyes when I read that poem, because it's a daughter's letter to her mother.
Okay.
Saying that, because the other is also true. Parents will sit and moan and say, they don't learn anything from us. Look at these children. Kuch sunte hi nahi hai. Look at, I was not like that as a child. Look at my child. They don't just see. They don't learn from me. They do. They do. And they do. And the examples she gives in that poem is that something, you went to see your friend when she was sick, and I knew that it is good to be kind. I learned it is good to be kind. When you were upset, I saw you crying, but I understood there is courage in crying too. So children are learning by observing every minute. So, and don't fake it. Don't fake it.
Yeah. They can make a difference.
Oh my God. Of course they can.
They can pick it up.
They can pick it up. A 4-year-old knows when an aunt or uncle who's coming in, whether they actually mean the joyful smile that they're giving them. The children are not blank canvases on which you're writing notes. They're humans. They have a brain. So don't fake it with them. Be authentic. If something is not acceptable, give them the reasons why, but don't then say, okay, acha, you want to do it, so it's fine. My son can do it, but my daughter can't. Don't do that either. And unconditional love. That's the only place your child will get it, is from you.
Absolutely.
Only place where they'll get it. So children who have loving, secure parents who make them feel secure, the sky's the limit for them.
No, you brought out a very, very important observation there, especially on the parent side. But I think for children, they're also struggling. They're trying to find
themselves.
Because the media is talking a very different language.
True.
And it is catching fancy of
the young
children.
It is going
and
to.
They are defining success in a very, very different way and in their own ways.
Toxic. At times toxic.
At times very toxic.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they're believing what they're seeing.
Yeah.
Because what they see at home, they take it as truth. And what they see on social media, they're unfortunately taking that also as truth, which is a made-up story.
And then there's the inconsistency. They don't know. There's the confusion.
There's a confusion.
Yeah.
So how can a school help, in this whole, I mean, you've already gone ahead with, taking some, detoxification, screen detoxification kind of exercises. So how can children, keep themselves in a sane mindset in this, barrage of social media interference?
Yeah. I think there are two things here. One, there is no quick fix, overnight solution to this. And number two, if there is one thing that there needs to be a strong partnership between home and school, it's on this. Because the constant messaging, now, I mean, at a school, for example, there is this constant messaging about, how to use screens, how to ethically and responsibly use media. So I know countries have gone about banning social media, ban this, ban phones.
Is that a good sign though?
But I think it's an act of desperation.
It's an act
to
of
be
desperation.
honest.
I mean, if you can't manage it or
If you can't
understand or
manage
regulate
ban
it, just shut it down.
I think the bigger challenge, the tougher thing to do is to give it in their hands and say, use it responsibly. And I think
spend effort there
because what are you going to do when they're 18? They're going to use it. So what are you going to do then? So a lot of time and effort at least is spent in a lot of very good schools on how to ensure that so when there is a line that's crossed, for example, on cyberbullying or things like that, there is zero tolerance. You take a hard line. And that's a message that cascades, right? So in our school, for example, children they can bring their phones after grade 9, but they have to keep it away for the day. So because it's a distraction. Yeah. Each time you come out, you want to see, has there been a message? Has somebody replied to this? Has somebody done that? But to say that banning it is not a solution, because that's not the real world. Yeah. That is not the real world. So, I mean, the dichotomy is that when COVID happened or when AQI goes bad, you say everybody go to your screens. You do that because technology has become a part of your life. Yeah. But I think the effort and energy has to be spent, bring in experts, bring in case studies, bring in examples, constantly trying to educate. And they are sensible people. Nobody wants to be unhappy. Yeah. Nobody wants to be sitting in the principal's office being ticked off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you made a mistake, learn from it, move on. I think that's how I view discipline.
And do you see a role of assigning mentors to the children?
Yes, absolutely.
And especially,
I think every child deserves and has a right to have a good adult in their lives in school. And we have a mentoring program that we put into place for IB, which we are now going to cascade to all of secondary.
Okay.
And the idea is that probably in the lower classes, it'll be 4 or 5 children with one teacher. And the idea is to have somebody who's not your subject teacher. True. Somebody who's not talking about grades. Somebody's not doing any of that, but is just there to help you. I mean, as a school, we have 6 counselors in school. Many schools don't have that.
True.
We have 6 counselors across the school for this very reason.
And a lot of people see you as a mentor, as someone who they look up to. Who has been your mentor growing up in this field?
Okay, growing up, it was my parents.
Okay.
I think I talked to you about values. I think my values come from them. And my father used to say that, the chair is transient, whichever chair you sit on. People should remember you for who you are as a human being and not the chair you occupy. So that's been a mantra. If you have a good head, that's not good enough. You need a good heart. Do it right, my mother would say. If you're in the right, you don't need to be afraid. And even if it's difficult, do the right thing. So those were the values I grew up with. When I was doing my practice teaching, my teaching supervisor, Dr. Geeta Sani, she is from DPS.
Oh, really?
She was from DPS. Dr. Geeta Sani was my teaching supervisor, and she became an absolute role model in terms of academic integrity and how do you grow leaders, how do you build capacity. So that stayed with me. I've also learned from, obviously, my colleagues. I've learned from my students. My students have taught me.
Any incident that comes to your mind, the student really transformed dropped some of your guards, which you always carried?
I think didn't drop a guard. That usually doesn't happen with me. That usually doesn't happen with me. But I got a lesson I was told by one of my students that, in the nicest possible way, that I played a transformative role in her journey as an individual. And she said, you changed it for me when I was in grade 9. I used to teach all the way through from grade 9 to 13. And then when I became principal, and then she came to see me. And her constant challenge to me is that you should not stop teaching year 9. You have no idea what you can do in grade 9. And anytime I see her, I'm afraid because I haven't followed her advice. And she's still not teaching year 9. She'll just come and say that in this very sweet, rather challenging, still not teaching year 9. I said, no, don't have the time. She said, and she just go that, I rest my case, you're still not teaching year 9. But I think I did learn from my students that lastminute.com does work.
Lastminute.com
does work.
Absolutely.
Does work.
Yeah. No, great. So, we are pretty much out of time, but I would love to, get your, thoughts on any book that has been of significant influence for you and you would really like other educators and parents to definitely go through.
Yeah, there've been a few. One has been Michael Fullan, The Moral Purpose of Leadership. Then, of course, Blanchard, and I've read books on leadership. Recently, I've read a lot of Brené Brown.
Okay.
And she talks a lot about authenticity in leadership. Fantastic author. Great examples, worth reading. And I'm just giving you a few. And the other one is by Thich Nhat Hanh, No Mud, No Lotus. That's another phenomenal book. And the last one is by, I think it's Chip and Dan Heath, called Switch.
Okay.
That's a very interesting concept, which I've tried to introduce in school as well. Very interesting concept. Focus on the bright spots and not on what's going wrong.
As they always say.
Yeah, but it's done it's a very well written book, worth reading.
Amazing. And any message for the policymakers?
Just one?
All right, we're adding another hour for this conversation now. No. Let's go into it.
I think policies which have inputs from practitioners is critical, because policy cannot remain on paper. Good policy has to be actioned. So any policy that is done has to have evaluation mechanisms, that how do we know it's working? In other words, you have to get practitioners into the fold because it's not just enough to make a policy. You have to train people to implement that policy.
That's true.
And I think so. If there was one thing to the educational fraternity, would be spend money on teacher training. Spend money on getting the right kind of teacher training. For the new NEP is fantastic. It's got a great vision. So you need a set of teachers who will work to that pedagogy.
Absolutely. Very well said.
Yeah, I think that's needed.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm sure all the educators, students and parents would definitely take out some really beautiful nuggets out of this conversation.
Thank you so much, Aakash. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much.